Have you ever noticed that in the real world, the people who talk too much, the ones who show too much intelligence, tend to lose? There's a type of person you immediately underestimate. They seem slow, distracted, even naive. You relax around them, lower your guard, say more than you should. And that's exactly where you've already lost. Because while you perform, they observe. While you try to impress, they collect. While you speak, they understand. And by the time you realize it, you've been played. Now tell me, what if appearing less intelligent is actually the smartest way to win? This idea spans centuries and was distilled by Machiavelli. But what he meant goes far beyond pretending to be stupid. It touches something uncomfortable. The human ego makes us predictable and manipulable. There's a common mistake. Believing intelligence must be constantly displayed. People want to seem sharp, superior to win arguments. But that triggers resistance. When you show intelligence too explicitly, you provoke defensiveness, envy, and caution. People start measuring their words, hiding intentions, building walls. But when you seem simple, something changes. People relax. And when they relax, they reveal who they are. Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing." It wasn't ignorance, it was control. By taking that position, he made others expose themselves, reveal beliefs, contradictions, weaknesses, and then he dismantled them. This isn't about being stupid, it's about letting the other person disarm themselves. Today, this is even more visible. How many people lose credibility by trying too hard to sound intelligent? They correct everyone, jump into arguments, need the last word. That reveals weakness. Anyone who needs to prove power doesn't have it. Here comes the illusion of superiority. Most people believe they're more intelligent than they really are, and that creates a trap. Those who feel superior underestimate, and those who underestimate expose themselves. Now imagine entering a conversation not to win, but to understand. You ask, you don't correct, you don't confront, and you let the person talk more and more, until they reveal insecurities, motivations, contradictions. That's the point where the game changes. But there's a crucial detail. This doesn't work if it's fake, if you pretend, but inside you still need to prove something. It shows. Your body gives it away. Your eyes reveal it. Humans detect inconsistency. That's why this requires more than intelligence. It requires ego control. Nietzsche said, "Those who constantly need to assert strength are compensating for weakness." You see it in interruptions, corrections, displays of knowledge. Everything screams, "Validate me." Now compare that to someone who observes, speaks little, doesn't react quickly. That person becomes unpredictable. And the human brain hates the unpredictable. It creates respect, even tension. That's the space where power is built. But here's the danger. Many people apply this superficially. They try to act dumb mechanically, and the effect is the opposite. They look weak, not strategic. There's a massive difference between seeming harmless and being irrelevant. So the question isn't how to pretend to be stupid. It's how do you appear less threatening without losing presence? How do you reduce the perception of intelligence without losing control? And most importantly, when should you use this? Because outside the right moment, it can destroy you socially. In environments of power, meetings, negotiations, relationships, there's an invisible game. Who understands more? Who controls more information? Most people give everything away trying to prove value. They reveal how they think, their limits, their intentions. It's like playing with your cards face up. Now imagine someone who reveals nothing, doesn't react quickly, doesn't try to impress, seems out of the game, but is the only one who hasn't shown their hand. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden part that drives our actions. When you downplay yourself, you allow the other person's shadow to emerge, and then you see what truly drives them. Fear, vanity, the need for approval. And when you see that, you don't need to compete. You lead. But there's a cost. Giving up immediate recognition. You won't be the most admired, nor the center of attention. And that's why few people can apply this, because it requires patience. And patience today is rare. When you apply this well, something curious happens. People trust you more than they should. Information flows. Opportunities appear. Conversations go deeper. And you begin to see layers that were once invisible. But this is where the biggest mistake lives. When you realize this power, something changes. And power without control reveals itself. Your posture shifts, your gaze changes, and you become a threat again. And then everything collapses. There's a deeper level to this. It's not just behavior, it's how you understand intelligence itself. Because most interactions aren't about logic, they're about perception, emotion, identity. And that's why trying to win through intelligence often means losing the real game. And there's one final detail, almost invisible, that separates those who try from those who master it. Not appearing stupid, but appearing as someone who has nothing to prove. And that involves something few are willing to face. It's not in the other person, it's in you. And if you don't understand that, you'll always reveal it at the decisive moment. So, the final question is, what inside you still needs to be seen? And why might that be the greatest weakness someone could use against you? Because in the end, the first person you need to learn to influence isn't someone else. It's you. There's an uncomfortable truth running through everything you've heard so far. One that completely separates amateurs from real strategists. You can only appear truly harmless when you have nothing to prove. And that's not a technique. It's internal structure. Most people try to apply social strategies like masks. They learn phrases, postures, calculated silences, but internally, they're still driven by the same urgency. I need to be recognized. I need to show my value. I need to be seen as intelligent. And that need leaks. It always leaks. Maybe not through words, but in the microsecond before you respond, in the urge to interrupt, in the subtle smile of superiority, in the discomfort with silence. And people feel it, even if they can't explain why. This is what Machiavelli understood, and what few have the courage to accept. The game of power isn't won by the one who acts better, but by the one who needs less. Less validation, less recognition, less approval. The less you need, the less predictable you become. And the less predictable, the harder you are to manipulate. Now let's go deeper into the most dangerous point of all. Because up to now, you've learned how to downplay yourself, how to observe, how to let others reveal themselves. But there's an inevitable moment, a turning point, the moment when you stop being invisible and need to act. And this is where everything can go wrong. If you act too early, you reveal the game. If you act too late, you lose control of the situation. This timing isn't logical, it's psychological. And it depends on something most people completely ignore: real-time emotional reading. Think about a conversation. The other person is talking, opening up, showing more than they should. You're silent, observing, absorbing. But there's an exact moment when the energy shifts, a microsecond where the other person starts to realize they may have said too much. A slight withdrawal, a change in tone, a pause that breaks the rhythm. That's the critical point. If you miss it, you lose. If you become aggressive, you lose. But if you act with precision, you take control without the other person noticing. How? Not by confronting, not by correcting, but by guiding. You introduce a simple question, a neutral statement, something that seems to follow their line of thought, but actually redirects it. And in that moment, they believe they're still leading, but they're not. This is the level where influence stops being visible and becomes structural. Now, this leads us even deeper, because so far we've been talking about behavior, but true mastery happens in perception. There's a concept in psychology called frame. A frame is essentially the lens through which an interaction is interpreted. Whoever controls the frame controls the meaning, and whoever controls the meaning controls the reality of that interaction. Most people try to win arguments inside someone else's frame, and that's a fatal mistake, because even if you win, you're still playing on their ground. Now imagine someone who doesn't enter the frame, who doesn't react as expected, who doesn't compete. That person creates a void, and the human brain hates a void, so it tries to fill it, and in doing so, reveals even more. This is where playing dumb reaches its highest level. It's not about appearing less intelligent. It's about not automatically accepting the game being offered. It's about not validating someone else's frame. And that requires something extremely rare: real-time awareness. Now let's bring this into something concrete. Relationships. How many times has someone tried to provoke you? Create conflict. Test your limits. If you react quickly, you enter their frame. If you defend yourself, you validate the provocation. But if you observe, if you don't react as expected, if you respond in a way that completely shifts the dynamic, The other person loses control of the interaction, and that creates something powerful: repositioning. You stop being predictable and become someone who needs to be figured out, and that changes everything. But here's what few are willing to face: this kind of control can be used to build or to manipulate destructively. And the line between the two is defined by intention. Carl Jung said that those who don't integrate their shadow end up being controlled by it. And this strategy, when used without awareness, can turn you into exactly what you think you're mastering: an unconscious manipulator, someone who plays without understanding the impact, someone who extracts without building. And in the short term, it works. But in the long term, it destroys trust, isolates you, corrupts relationships, and eventually turns against you. So the real question isn't just, how do you use this? The question is, why do you want to use it? To control, to protect, to position yourself, or to compensate for something unresolved inside you? Because depending on that answer, the same strategy can elevate you or destroy you. Now, there's one final level, and this is where everything connects. The real power of playing dumb isn't in deceiving others. It's in not being a slave to your own intelligence. It sounds contradictory, but it's not. Most intelligent people suffer from an invisible problem. They're trapped by the need for coherence. They need to respond, to analyze, to have an opinion, to conclude. And that makes them predictable. Now imagine someone who doesn't need to respond to everything, who doesn't need to react to everything, who doesn't need to have an opinion on everything. That person chooses. They decide when to engage and when not to. And that creates something rare: strategic freedom. They're not pulled into interactions, not dragged into provocations, not hijacked by useless arguments. They observe and only act when there's real advantage. That's the point where you stop playing other people's games and start creating your own. But this comes at a high cost, because the modern world rewards the exact opposite: exposure, reactivity, constant opinion, speed. You're constantly pushed to speak, respond, react, take a stance. And by doing that, you become fully readable, fully predictable, fully manipulable. So when you step out of that pattern, something interesting happens. Some people will underestimate you. Others will find you strange. And some will start watching you much more closely. Because deep down, strategic silence is uncomfortable. It creates tension. It raises questions. And where there are questions, there is power. Now think about this. How many times have you lost an advantage simply because you spoke too soon? How many times did you reveal your intention too early? How many times did you try to sound intelligent and ended up being predictable? And how many opportunities passed because you felt the need to prove yourself? This video isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about understanding the game that's already happening. with or without your awareness, and deciding whether you'll keep playing impulsively or start playing strategically. But this only works if you're willing to face the hardest part, controlling yourself before trying to control others. Because in the end, those who can't master their own ego always reveal their game, and those who reveal their game always lose to those who observe in silence. Now tell me, have you ever noticed moments where someone manipulated you exactly like this, without you realizing it? Or worse, have you ever done this to someone without even noticing? Drop a comment below. I want to see how deeply you already understand this game. If this kind of content expanded the way you think, leave a like. And if you want to keep mastering these invisible layers of human behavior, subscribe to the channel Art of Awareness. Because here, you don't just learn how to react to the world, you learn to see what's behind it.